Good afternoon, and welcome to The Real with Dr. Wendi. I am your host, Dr. Wendi Watson, and I am super excited about our guest today, as well as our topic. And so, our topic for today is changing the narrative, Black men, fatherhood, and family. And so, today I have Mr. Rufus Wilson. So, Mr. Wilson is a business owner. He has a nonprofit that he founded. He is a speaker as well as a community leader with a passion for helping people discover purpose beyond life's transition. And so I certainly want to hear a little bit more about that. As the founder of SORTEC, that's TEK LLC, he has built a reputation for connecting skilled tradespeople with meaningful career opportunities while emphasizing safety, professionalism, as well as excellence. He is also the founder of Second Season, a nonprofit organization dedicated to supporting athletes as they navigate life after sports through mentorship, mental health advocacy, career development, as well as community engagement. Mr. Rufus also has a background in education, recruiting, and leadership. He is committed to empowering individuals to recognize that their greatest impact often begins after their first chapter ends. He actively serves his local community through mentorship, church leadership, and youth development initiatives, believing that strong relationships and service are the foundation of lasting change. So whether speaking to athletes, business professionals, or young people, Mr. Rufus inspires others to embrace resilience, lead with purpose, and make a meaningful difference in the lives of those around him. So welcome, Mr. Rufus. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me.
Yes. And so that was a, wonderful introduction. I'd like to have you tell us a little bit more about the initiatives that you have going on, the nonprofit organizations.
Okay. Absolutely. So with SORTEC, we started SORTEC about 6.5 years ago. And what we do there is we provide skilled labor for contractors within construction. So we primarily deal with electricians, finding homes for electricians, providing electricians for large scale contractors or even the smaller scale contractors as well. Second Season is one of our babies. Second Season is our nonprofit where we provide athletes with mental health relationships, as well as dealing with connecting them to employability skills and showing them that there is life after athletics. In the most case, most athletes, if they start when they're 3, 4 years old, that's all they do throughout their life. And once the air runs out of the ball, they don't know where to go and what the next steps are. So we facilitate and assisting them in that as well. So,
Nice. So sounds like you're doing some awesome things in the community.
right. We love what we do for sure.
Wonderful. So I do want to say happy Father's Day. I
Thank you.
know Father's Day was yesterday, but happy Father's Day. And again, our topic for this episode is changing the narrative, Black men,
Mhm.
fatherhood, and family.
All right.
And so what we know is that Black fathers are often portrayed negatively in the media, despite research showing that many are highly involved in their children's lives.
Right. For sure.
And so we just kind of want to portray that in this episode. So tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey into fatherhood.
Okay. Well, I have 4 kids. Been in fatherhood all my life. Actually, I had my first child when I was 19 years old. It was a very scary situation. Although I had a support system with my mother and my father in the home, just having a child changed my life. In some cases, I wasn't ready to be a father. I was still young, trying to explore life, coming out of athletics or going into athletics still while I was having a child. It really changed me in the dynamic of trying to. It pushed me into being an adult quicker than what I really wanted to be. So playing baseball, my child is one, and she's coming to the games, and all my other friends are, they're just college students, and here I am with a 1 year old, and trying to navigate through that. So right now I have a 24-year old, I have a 20-year old, a 19-year or 18-year old, and a 7-year old. So fatherhood's been a large part of my life.
Yeah. And so, having a child at 19, what was your reaction when you first learned you were going to be a father?
My reaction was it's all over now. I thought my career was going to be over. My parents had always told me, You're gonna have all these babies and leave them with us. You're gonna go work at the
Yeah.
chicken factory." you know. But that
Right.
wasn't the case. I thank God for having a great support system around me during that time, and it allowed me to continue through my baseball career as well. But in doing so, things were put in perspective, should we say. I told myself at that moment, becoming a father, that if I ever lost a love for baseball, then I would just walk away, which eventually happened down the road. So.
You lost the love for baseball?
Well, my daughter she was ill a lot. My first daughter, she was ill a
Okay.
lot when she was young. And then I was riding on a bus going from one city to another. And this was after my college career into the semi-pro career or the professional career. I heard her crying and screaming. And I told my coach, I said, when we get to the next city, I'm done. I knew it was time to step into fatherhood and be there, not only for my child, but for her mother as well.
Okay, so just kind of prioritizing responsibilities.
Right, for
And
sure.
so it sounds like, yeah, it sounds like, your daughter was first priority.
Absolutely. Absolutely. As she always has been as well. So.
Yeah. So at 19, I can only imagine, the fear of becoming a father. And did you experience that? And what was that like for you? What was it like emotionally? What was it like mentally? Was it mentally challenging to wrap your head around being a father at 19? And how did you
Right.
deal with that?
Yeah, that's a good question, Miss Wendy. There was a fear and an anxiety. The anxiety stepped in when I realized that I was no longer important to my family. That the child, that my daughter Kayla, was the most important part, and they navigated life that way. They treated me differently. Some things that they would normally do, we'll say little things like holidays. They weren't getting gifts for me anymore. They were definitely just doing it for my daughter. And the fear came from the unknown.
Mm,
The understanding came from I had a good blueprint from the way my father had fathered me. Although it wasn't the greatest most times, but he was definitely available and present in my life, which helped. So.
So your experience with your father just kind of shaped you into being the father that you became.
Right, right. And in most cases, like, I actually picked up the things that my father lacked in our relationship, such as I always wanted to make sure that I didn't I treated my daughters the best so that they would understand that the way I treat their mother is how a woman's supposed to be treated. But my father never missed any of my games. He was always present, even in college and beyond. And I lacked that portion as they were smaller, like being present at their games and being the present father, because I was still trying to be, I was 19, and I was
Yeah,
trying to live my
yeah.
life. But I thank God for changing that and moving forward. So I picked up some of the strong suits I picked up some of the lower suits that my dad had in our relationship, but I didn't necessarily take on the strong suits in which we had in our relationship early on.
So when you say the strong suits, you didn't necessarily take them on. What do you mean? Give me an
Being
example of
present,
that.
being present, like being present, being that present father. I was still traveling, playing softball after baseball. Every weekend I was gone, but I did live in the home. I did make sure they ate. I made sure they had the resources they needed. But being a present father on weekends and being engaged in things that they had going on, early on, I didn't have that. And I had to apologize to my kids. Now they're older and they're able to understand that. So
Yeah,
that was part of
yeah.
my development phase.
Okay, so at 19, yeah. as a young father, you mentioned you still had your life to live. You still had some desires and goals and things that you wanted to accomplish and
Right,
things that you enjoyed doing. And so, even though you were in the household and you provided,
right,
you still did some of the things that you enjoyed doing.
right.
And how do you think that impacted, your children? Because you said there was a point where you had to apologize
Right.
for not being as present as you would have liked to have been. And how do you
Right.
think it impacted them?
Well, it impacted me. A lot of times you'll hear people say, "My dad was there, but he wasn't present."
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
in one of those cases, I understand that. And part of my development as a father and how I can teach and mold new fathers moving forward is that that is a phase of your life. As I've told the young men that are, around who I mentor, I tell them, hey, give your father some grace because he may not know how to be a father just yet. Or he may be learning to learn how to be a father. But as the impact on my kids, I think it was is very tough for them to understand more so as they got older and I got remarried and I had another child. I think there was some envy there of them feeling like Gianna was getting the best version of dad because a lot of the things that I was doing back then that eliminated my time with them, I was no longer doing in my adult life. But I think apologizing and talking with them directly and saying, hey, I'm sorry for not being the best version of myself in your lives at a young age really helped mend our relationship moving forward. So we have a great relationship based off that conversation in those
Nice.
conversations, I'll say. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think you kind of talked about this, but how has being a Black father shaped your identity as a man?
Yeah, being a Black father has shaped me, every aspect of me. The identification that, like, the importance of being there for my kids as a Black father means a lot to me. Understanding the dynamic that society portrays what a Black father is. There's a lot of misnomers, like Black fathers aren't present. That's not
Yeah.
true. We have some of the most present fathers in the community and in the world at the moment, but they would be better portrayed as if we're not, because that's a misnomer. Society has done a really good job of portraying the Black father in a very bad light. So first off, we started as the brutes, right? Like Black fathers were dangerous and they were violent and all of that. And then once that phase went out, they had to paint another perspective, and that perspective, sadly turned into the non-present perspective. And that's not true. If you look in your communities, you see a lot of Black fathers working with youth sports as community advocates and things of that nature. But if you're just going to take the narrative of what we're being told, then we would think Black fathers are absent in every household, which is not true. So it's important to me to advocate for that, not only with my kids, but other Black families as well.
Nice. So thank you for, talking about those misconceptions that we have within the Black community, that media
Right.
has portrayed that, our Black men, our Black fathers aren't there.
Right.
So yeah, thank you for speaking to that.
For sure.
Now, so how important is representation of positive Black fathers in media and society? How important do you think that is?
I think it's major important, super important. As I go through mentoring, I hear a lot of stories of young men that maybe have lost their connections with their fathers or not willing to give the second opportunity to their fathers. It doesn't mean absent. It just means that there needs to be some conversation, like I was having with my children. But it's important because it's hard for our children to understand the perspective of life unless they're getting it from Black fathers or Black men, powerful, Black men that can be trusted, can be accountable. Those two things are really big in our community. Can I trust you? And are you accountable? Even through like the mentorships and the programs that I'm working with now, it's taken a while for them to say, okay, I trust you, Mr. Rufus, right? Because they're not used to that in some cases. And they're like, he's just doing this because there's something on the back end that he's going to gain from it. And that's not the case.
Yeah.
But being a Black man and a Black father in a community that needs more Black men and Black fathers, I understand that. So I know I have to operate from a perspective of trust and accountability. When I
Yeah.
say I'm gonna be somewhere, I'm there. If I tell you I'm gonna do something, I do it. And that's the biggest part of molding and mending that gap between the youth of the Black community and the Black fathers in the community is being
Yeah.
accountable and being trustworthy. So that's
Yeah.
to me.
Yeah, and you mentioned something very important with, working with the youth that you're working with.
Mhm,
I know some of the youth that you're working with
mhm.
haven't grown up with a father in their household.
Right,
And as you mentioned, because of that, they are not as trusting with other men. And in fact, we've heard young men say, I don't even like men
right, right,
because of their experience with their own fathers
for sure.
or the lack of. And
Right,
so the point that you make in terms of modeling some behavior, such as saying, showing up when you say you're going to show up,
right,
and then the way that you interact or engage with them, the way that you talk to them, right?
right.
Because some of them, has have that mistrust based off of, or that dislike based off of how they were treated
That's right.
by their fathers. So those are great points that you make when you say, "Hey, I'm mentoring, and so
Right.
I'm modeling what a good father looks like," even though, you're working with individuals whose father may not have been in their lives, but they can have that positive father figure.
I was gonna say there's another side to that as well, right? So the relationship or the lack thereof that they have with their father still, it
Mhm.
creates a vice in a way as well for, say, a young man to tell his father, I have a Mr. Wilson in a program that's teaching me how to pump gas, that's holding me accountable, also teaching me how to build a budget and grab a bank account. Now, in some cases, those fathers see that as a challenge, like he's trying to be your father, and I'm
Yeah.
very careful with not doing that. Um, but also telling the youth, hey, give your father a chance. I'm not trying to be your father. I want to mentor you so that you can be a great father and also build a relationship with your father if there's not one. So that is another challenge as well.
How important, and this is a question and answer for our listeners, who may be young fathers out there or even older fathers. How important is communication when we're communicating with, our youth?
Right.
Because, what I even notice is with this generation, especially males,
Mhm.
you know, they want to be respected.
Right.
They
Right.
want to be valued. They
Right.
want to be heard. And if they're not getting that, if they're not being communicated to effectively,
Right.
then that can certainly take a turn for the negative.
Yeah.
And that can strain the relationship that they are trying to have or have with their parent, any parent, whether it's a mother or father.
Right.
And so how important do you think effective communication is, and what does that even look like
Right.
with the parent and the youth, especially our
Right.
youth today?
Effective communication is super important. Fortunately or unfortunately, we live in a society now that everything's you're in a spotlight and everything. Like there's a camera everywhere you go. And our kids, unlike the way we grew up, where it was kind of a micro environment, like your family, the people you grew up with, your cousins, that was all that your information, that was the little lines of where your communication would go. Now these guys are growing up under a microscope, like everything. They're social media, there's communication in the school, there's cameras in school. So as an adult, I had to, as a male mentor, as a black male mentor, I had to understand that like being under a microscope all the time changes your dynamic in the way that you are communicated with.
Mhm.
Communication now has to be more open, more so
Yeah,
than my father telling me because I said so, uh,
yeah,
or you're gonna do it. Don't do as I do, do as I say.
yeah.
Those things now, I mean, imagine if my children had a microscope of my childhood and how they would view me as a father, because I didn't always get it right. I didn't always communicate, but now communication, even in the tone of your voice, the words that you use, the time that you use the words and all of that is super important. I've noticed that young black men don't take challenges very well. So when I come with the challenging tone, then I'm going to be met with the same type tone from them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's not necessarily a bad thing. And as a mentor, like I said, the older generation, we tend to eliminate that communication altogether. They're not gonna get it. They don't understand. But it's not the case though. In reality, it's just we have to take time as adults to understand how they function. If you have a meeting, all right, and you take baby boomers and you take Gen Zs and put them in a meeting together, when they show up, their viewpoint's going to be completely different. Like what they're focused on is going to be different.
Yeah.
The baby
Yeah.
boomers are going to be focused on, the attendance and all of that, and the Gen Zs are going to be focused on why do I even have to be here? Like, couldn't we
Yeah.
do this on a Zoom call
Right.
and all of that?
Yeah.
So it's a clash. Communication, right? Gen Zs may say, well, what is an overhead projector? Why are we using that? Why are you reading everything on a PowerPoint presentation to me?
Yeah.
So we have to understand as communication, we have to be more versatile in our communication to get them. Sorry.
And how hard is that? How hard is that? Because, you mentioned about, historically, with different generations, the older generations, the way that we were brought up. Yes, it was, you're to be seen and not
Not
heard,
heard.
or do as I say, not as I do. And, those things didn't really work then, and they're not working effectively now.
Right.
And so, how hard is it because if we have a listener who's listening to this conversation, and our hope for these episodes is that, people are learning,
Right.
that we are empowering, that we're providing this information so that you can take away with it tools
Right.
to help you in your everyday life.
Right.
And so many times we see how ineffective communication can be. But how hard is it for someone to change the way they think
Right.
and the way that they communicate with their kids?
Right.
Yeah, yeah. How hard is it?
It's tough. First, we have to identify that we have to change as parents, right?
Yeah,
And it's tough for us as parents because our kids are everything to us, right? But for my change, it came when I understood that my kids were not the most important part of my marriage or my life, right? They are important, but they're not the most important part. Uh,
yeah,
Understanding that my role as a parent and as a mentor is not to make them me per se. My
uh,
role is to shepherd them, right? So if I'm shepherding my children, which are sheep, then I can't feed them dog food because they're not dogs and they won't receive it that way. I may have some dog in my life, but my kids aren't going to interpret it that way and they're not going to be able to receive it that way because they're sheep. My goal and my
oh,
understanding is that I have to provide the materials for them to move forward towards their purpose, not my purpose, because they make up my grandparents, my great grandparents, my aunts, my uncles on not only my side, but my wife's side as well. So it's like they're not me. They're not going to be me. As we know, if you've had multiple children, they're all different. They all have different needs. You got to talk to them different. But
yeah.
understanding that helps me interact with other youth in the community as well as my kids that I have, in my home. So being versatile.
Being versatile. So it sounds like what you're saying is that, you know, parents have to, or they are encouraged to have a level of willingness,
Right.
willing to take a look at your parenting style and, just kind of explore or reflect. Is this working? Is it
Right.
effective? What's happening? Am I getting to my kid in the
Right.
way that I'm currently communicating? And
Right.
if I'm not, then I have to be willing to, like, as you said, be versatile and make some changes in me and not think that it's my kid who should make all the changes.
Right.
And maybe the kid should make some changes, but realizing that I too, as a human being, even though I'm the parent, have to, be open to a different style of
For sure.
parenting or a different perspective. So that's very important, because again, I work with youth as well, and a lot of what I see is, it's the way that they talk to me, it's the
Right.
way that they treat me, it's the way. And from a parent's perspective, I totally understand that we love our kids, we want
Right.
what's best for them, and as you mentioned, you made a great point, they're not me.
No, they're not.
And
They're
I
not.
don't have to try to conform them into who I am or who I want them to be. I mean, we have expectations, but I think, we also have to have a level of acceptance that they're their own person.
Right.
Yeah.
For sure. For sure. They are their own person. And also, Dr. Watson, we're understanding that they spend 40 hours or more away from us at school or wherever they're at during the week. So once again, if their purpose is being, maneuvered and changed 40 hours a week by their peers and other people around them, it's hard as a parent to mold them into what you want them to be and all of that as well. So,
That's another great point that you make, that we tend to see once they hit adolescent
hmm
that they are more influenced by their peers,
right.
their community, more so than their parents.
That's right.
There's a shift that happens when they become teenagers.
Right.
And so I know parents see that shift. The youth are then developing in different areas, socially, emotionally, mentally, physically. There's a
Right.
lot going on, and they're really at that age where they're trying to figure out who they are. And so
Self
having that space to be able to do that is gonna, really help them. It's gonna support them. And again, we have expectations, but they may not always
for sure.
meet our expectations. So now, in terms of emotional and mental health, how do you think fatherhood impacted your mental and emotional well-being? Or how do you think it impacted those areas, period?
Yeah, fatherhood definitely impacted my mental health. Like I said early on, the lack thereof of understanding of how my mental health was being affected because it was about me, 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 me. But once I understood that I had to protect, once the protection side came into my mind as a father, then my mental health completely shifted. Like it went from, father has children to father protect children, be there for children, protect children from other people, protect children from the world. And then it affected my mental health. And my mental health actually got better in cases because I was able to identify that my mental health even existed.
Yeah.
Growing up in a household where it was, I can shape your mental health by putting this belt on you,
Right.
and I didn't
Yeah.
take that path with my kids. So I had to actually identify what the issue was, what the cause of the issue was, and how my mental health was either going to make that better or was going to make it worse within my children. So yeah, it made my mental health a lot better and understanding that one, I needed to talk to somebody, talk to some people that had kids that
Yeah.
understood developmental stages and all of that,
Yeah.
understanding that it's okay because when they were young, I wasn't present in their lives and the things they wanted to do. But as they got older, I had to have a male mentor tell me it's okay for you to have your personal time too, Rufus, you know, because I was eliminating that because I wanted to give them all my time, but understanding that personal time was important too as a father. We need that as well. So
So pretty much self-care,
self-care, that's right. Yeah,
yeah, is good for your mental health,
absolutely.
because we all have mental health,
Everybody,
and
right.
just like we have physical health.
Yeah,
And sometimes the stressors that come along with being a parent can impact our mental well-being.
for sure.
And so that's a great point that you make, and in terms of being aware of my mental health,
Right.
being aware that I am still a human being and I don't have to do this perfectly, and I'm not going to do it
That's
perfectly.
right. That's
And
right.
it's okay, in terms of giving yourself grace for not being the perfect parent, because
Right.
there isn't one,
No.
but also understanding that it's okay to have emotions.
Right.
It's okay to have thoughts, you know, about the situation. And what you said, I love, it's okay to talk to somebody else
That's right. That's right.
who has experience about this stage of development with these kids, that can help you.
Right.
Yeah, it's okay to ask for help.
Right. For sure. For sure. And I also had to break down the values that my father had portrayed on me and what a man was. It's
Yeah.
in little things and big things as well. Like something as simple as my mom being in the kitchen cooking and she's saying, "Come here, let me show you how to do this." And my dad saying, "Get out of that kitchen, boy. Men don't be in the kitchen." But my mother's perspective, as she said, was he loves to eat. He needs to know how to cook for himself just in case he finds somebody that can't cook.
Yeah.
But that, in a way, if I didn't do that, I could have allowed that to change my mental health and raise my son up as my dad did. Like, you don't cook, you don't
Yeah.
go in the kitchen, you don't clean, and that's just a misnomer. And I wasn't going to allow that to happen for my son. So,
Yeah. So those gender roles.
gender roles, yeah. Mhm.
Yeah. And yeah, because back in the day, it was, you don't cry.
Right.
You can't show emotion.
Yeah.
You can't feel. You have to be this way.
Right.
You can't cook because that's a woman's place.
Right. Right.
And so, how have you just kind of changed? Because that was one of the questions I was going to ask. Are there things from your own childhood that you intentionally do different as a father?
Yeah, I do. One of the biggest things is I'm intentional about telling my kids I love them, specifically my son, and telling him, "Hey, man, every time we talk, I don't care if we've said it earlier morning, is when we leave each other, is I love you." And I remember my father telling me for the first time at like 38 years old that he loved me. And I said, "Wow." I said, Why so long?" And he said, "I feel like you can handle it now." And to
Mm,
me, I was like, man, like I could have handled it at 16, 17, 14, but in his mind, the way that he was raised, saying he loved me to his son was something that he felt like we had to be on kind of an equal playing field of understanding. And that him telling me he loves me, it was not to be taken as weakness from him. So in my life, I'm very intentional about telling my kids that I love them and meaning and having them understand the meaning of love. And it's not just something that's taken for granted. That there's actions, not only actions of endearment, but there's actions of thought, there's actions of care,
yeah.
and then there's
Yeah.
also some actions that you have to have some selflessness in it as well to do things for someone you may not particularly want to do. That's love.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that, because you mentioned that your father said, I think your question was, why so long?
That's
Like
so long. Yeah.
at 16, I could have, how would that have changed my life
Right. Right.
if I was told that I love you at 16?
Right.
Because don't we want to be loved? I mean,
Absolutely.
don't men want to be loved?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And
And
I'll say this too, Miss Watson.
mhm,
It's actually in my son's life, it's given him another level of confidence and
mm,
and knowing that like my dad's gonna be there for me. I can go try things and fail at it and be okay with it because my dad's gonna be there to help me navigate through it from a place of love. So
yeah.
yeah, it's been big. So,
Nice. And that is one of the things that, because I grew up in a household where we didn't communicate our feelings, we didn't have meaningful conversations. And that has really impacted the relationship that I have with my mother today,
mhm,
as well as my father. And I grew up thinking that I wasn't loved.
right.
I think sometimes We think because we put a roof over your head, we, provide your basic necessities,
Right.
that you should just assume that we love you because we're doing that.
Right.
When in fact, that is our responsibility.
That's it. That's it.
Yeah.
That's it.
Like that's your responsibility if you plan, whether you plan to have kids or not. If you
Right.
have kids, it is our responsibility. So we can't make the kids feel like they should be grateful, which yeah, they should be grateful, but
Right.
it's our responsibility as parents to take care of our kids. It's also our responsibility to let them know that we do love them. Don't
Right.
just assume that they know,
Right. Right. That's
because
part of the shepherding too as well, right? Like I'm very intentional and I always have been with my kids. I'm not going to reward you for your responsibilities, like cleaning your room and taking the trash out, and getting good grades. Like it's important that as a parent, we navigate those understandings that like, it's okay to do something nice for them for getting great grades, but not rewarding them for cleaning their room up. I mean, that's what you're supposed to do. And in life, if we do that, then as they become adults, then they're going to feel as if they have a roommate that their roommate's supposed to reward them for cleaning up their space. And that's not reality.
so certainly teaching them responsibility as
Right.
well.
For sure.
So, in terms of breaking the generational cycles, one of the things that you said you're doing differently is, you are communicating, conveying to
Right.
your kids that you love them,
Hmm.
which is something that you may not have grown up with.
Right.
What lessons from your upbringing have positively influenced your parenting?
Lessons such as, all right, so I would say the biggest lesson that I had as I was being brought up was, you have your name and that's all you have. Like your word is your bond. And I'll give you an example of that. My wedding day, before I told my dad I was going to pick him up for my wedding day at 9 o'clock a.m. to ride with me to the church. Had some late night activities that caused me to sleep in a little bit later. So I called him and said, "Hey, I'll be there at about 10:30 or 11." And he said, "For what?" And I said, "To go to the wedding." He said, "I'm not going." I said, "You're my best man. How are you not going?" He said, "You said you would be here at 9 o'clock." And I said, "Woo." And I was like thinking he's gonna ride with my mom, he's joking. And he never showed up. So as I took that and I understood that, because he's always been that way throughout my life, is that when you give somebody your word, you make sure that you can be there to do what you said you're gonna do. So that lesson in my life, I think, has been the catalyst for some success that I've had in life. Is that if I tell you I'm gonna be there at a certain time, you don't even have to ask me again because I'm gonna be there. If I tell you that I'm going to do something that I say I'm going to do, I'm going to do it, because that lesson in itself taught me something bigger than him telling me that he loves me, really. So,
Mm,
yeah,
that was a big lesson.
huge, huge lesson. And he didn't show up.
So, who ended up being the best man?
One of my better friends at that time wasn't Frankie, was my best man for my wedding. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
So, life lesson for sure.
Yeah. So now how'd you feel about that? Were you upset? Did you have some resentment?
Uh, yeah, I was upset initially, and I had some resentment for a few years. But when I self-evaluated my life and understood that there was a much bigger lesson in this that I needed to learn, um, I did learn, and it was okay. And I actually told him I thank him for doing that, because it taught me something. It taught me that being honest and being truthful and being, giving your word is what you're gonna do. That's become part of my makeup in life now. So,
Yeah. And that's a strong quality.
right.
In terms of fatherhood and community, how do you think communities can better support Black fathers?
One, by understanding that there are no black fathers that are accountable is a misnomer, because
Yeah.
we are there. We are in the community, and I think the community, as a community as a whole, allowing black fathers to be in their roles and do what it is that black fathers do is something that would allow it could make our community better as a whole. So what do I mean by that? So like if I'm coaching a youth football team and I have 60% uh, African Americans on my football team, my job as a coach is to coach these individuals and be a great mentor for them. It's not to assume that they don't all have good fathers in their lives. I can actually harm my community by doing that because these kids can feel it. They can feel it and they can say, well, where I think I'm bettering them by being a positive Black role model in their life and trying to be their father, they're going to say, coach is doing too much. He's really, he just needs to coach the football team and let my dad be my dad.
Yeah.
So as a community, we need to allow Black fathers to do what it is that we do best, and that's be there and be present, be involved. And as we're like using that example as a coach, when I see other Black fathers that are supporting their sons, I need to say, hey, man, I really appreciate you for just being there, man, and make it genuine and let him know that it's genuine. And then try to, garner a relationship with that individual outside because iron sharpens iron. If we can I'll take my community, for instance, in Zebulon, if I can get a bunch of, Black fathers together and we all sharpen each other and sharpening our kids, there's no telling what we could do here in Zebulon, in a positive
Absolutely.
fashion. So,
Absolutely.
yeah,
So let go of the assumptions
yeah,
and then, better support each other.
that's it. That's it.
Nice. Nice. What resources do fathers need that are often lacking?
That you need to talk to someone, that you can talk to someone, that it's okay to speak with someone about things you're battling. And I say that to my brothers all the time because the first thing we all say is, "Hey man, how you doing?" And we all respond, "Doing good, man. Good to see you." But are we prepared for the brother that's gonna say, "I'm not doing good"? And what would our response be?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because we all say, "I'm good," even when we're not. "I'm good.
Yeah.
I'm doing
Yeah.
good, man." So the resources is that if we could have the time to just get together and let down our guards and speak with each other and understand that like what I'm going through, brother Jason's going through too, and brother Todd's going through as well. And we can all come together and say, okay, well, if we're all battling the same situation, we need to come up with a resolution or a solution to this together. So that's what I would say. The resources would be opening up and talking to someone about our issues.
Right. We still, stand on don't let people know what's going on with you. Pull yourself up by the bootstrap. You
Yes.
can do this alone.
Right.
Our first episode was on resilience, and
Mm.
we had, Miss Erica L that came and talked about resilience. And one of the things that we discussed was, resilience don't mean that I have to handle everything alone. Yeah, I think some
So,
people believe that, yeah, in order for me to be strong and resilient, I have to, pull myself up by the bootstrap. I have to
yeah.
do this by myself, that it's weak if I ask for help. And so thank you for sharing that in terms of the resources.
Right.
Is, we as individuals have to be more open to asking for the help that we need, or even just saying that I need help.
Right. For sure. For sure.
Yeah. Because
Because there
I
are
don't know.
resources out there.
Yeah. We're each other resources.
That's right.
Yes. What advice would you give fathers who may be struggling?
I would give the advice of keep going. You're not the finished product. I would say the most important part of becoming a good father or moving towards being a great father is knowing Christ, aligning with Christ. That's the most important part. Um, I couldn't understand my faith, which was the biggest tool of fatherhood. I couldn't understand my faith until I identified that I had issues and that I needed to identify who I was, and become a better version of myself. That allowed me to be a better father. Because playing sports in my life created and I'm going to just call it what it is. It created a narcissistic attitude in my life because everyone told me I was the best. I never did anything wrong. Even my parents, like some things that I'd done that I shouldn't have done, they took care of it so it didn't become an issue, which would eliminate my opportunities to be better in sport. And because of that, it created an idea in my mind that like whenever I did bad, it wasn't my fault, it was somebody else's fault. Whenever something didn't work out, it wasn't my fault, it was someone else's fault. And through that, it created this mindset as a father that like whatever I say goes and I don't have to worry about what anyone else thinks because I am the man. And if you had that mentality, you're going to fail as a father, but it won't be too late if you understand that you can pull yourself up by your bootstrap and get your faith and understand that you're not the best version of yourself yet. You know, you have to give God the pen back and allow him to continue to write your story and not try to continue to pick it up and write your own story for yourself.
That's good. That's real good.
Yeah.
So my last question before we just kind of end this wonderful episode.
Mhm.
So when your children describe you years from now,
Right.
what do you hope they say about the kind of father you were?
I hope that my kids would say, oh, not only my kids, because I go to my kids, right? I would hope they would say that my father was one of a kind, that my father was a genuine loving man, and that I was able to accomplish this because my father showed me that, or my father provided that. Because my main goal is to leave my kids something that they can know me by and have a foundation that will last for generations after I'm gone. And I want to make them proud. I want my kids to say, I'm very proud of my father. I'm proud to say my father's name. I remember growing up and there were kids that were ashamed to even tell you who their dad was because of who he was. And I don't want that to be my kids. I want them to be proud. I want them to say, you know, my grandfather was Rufus Wilson, you know, and mean it and stand on it and be excited about it. But mostly I want them to say that my father was a genuine man and that he loved hard. So, yeah.
That's very interesting that you say you want them to remember you by, the fact that you love them.
Hmm.
Not that you left them millions of dollars,
Nope, 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 nope.
you left them property.
All right. Mm-mm.
It's that is the foundation,
Right.
right? That
Right.
I love my kids, I love them unconditionally,
That's right.
and that certainly can, morph into something that they can give their kids
For sure.
and then generations after that,
Yeah,
because I think that is what's most important.
that is. It
Yeah,
is.
and all the material things that you can give them is love.
That's love. That's love. Our kids won't appreciate the things that we leave them materially. You can work your entire life to leave them land. You can leave them cars. You know, you can leave them whatever you want to leave them. But if they don't love properly, then they're going to lose it all or they're not going to appreciate it. They're going to sell it off as soon as you're gone, because love is something that is a condition of the heart. And you
Yeah.
just will treat people the way that they need to be treated. And through that, you'll be able to elevate yourself within society, within your life, within your community. And that's just love. That's it.
So the takeaways that I actually got out of this episode of, changing the narrative about Black fathers is that, there are some misconceptions.
Right.
You know, Even though research says that there are, present fathers, we still, media, the perspective is that we don't have Black fathers that
Right.
are raising their children. And that is a myth.
Myth.
That's
That's a
a big,
misconception.
yeah, a big misconception. So we do have great fathers that are raising their children, and communication is going to be key.
Right.
Effective communication, because we know that we can communicate, but how are we
That's
communicating?
right.
And parents just kind of self-reflecting,
All right.
because this generation, their needs are different,
They are.
and they don't mind saying what they need. They don't mind advocating for themselves, standing up for themselves. And at the end of the day, love is what they want.
That's right. That's
And
right.
so that is a great way to end this episode of this podcast. And so, Mr. Rufus, I want to thank you so much for
Thank
joining
you.
me
Thank
on the
you.
reel, where we have real talk, real people, real conversation, real issues, but real tools and real change. So again, thank you, and I appreciate you for stopping by.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.